The Biden administration has just made a monumental decision that could drastically impact the future of the US economy. This move may be remembered as the turning point when China officially surpassed the US in both innovation and industrial capacity. Here's what happened. Earlier this week, President Biden announced a dramatic increase in US tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, raising them from 25% to a staggering 100%. At first glance, this might seem like a reasonable strategy to many Americans, who might think it's good to protect the American auto industry from cheap Chinese vehicles. It seems like these tariffs are intended to help American auto companies thrive. However, the reality is more complex and concerning. Biden's actions are not limited to EVs. He has imposed a series of tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods: 25% on steel and aluminum, 50% on semiconductors, and 50% on solar panels. His aim is to ensure that America leads the world in these crucial industries, but this bold move is problematic for two main reasons. First, Biden appears to be delusional about America's current manufacturing capabilities. US factories are in decline, not on the rise, and there is no concrete plan to reverse this trend. Second, these tariffs are likely to backfire, hurting the US economy and, most significantly, the average American consumer. Let's start with steel production. In 2022, China produced over 1 billion tons of steel, which is 54% of the world's total output. In contrast, the United States produced a mere 80 million tons. The harsh reality is that the American steel industry peaked more than 50 years ago and has since declined by 40% since 1973. There is no credible evidence to support Biden's claim that the US can lead the world in steel production. To understand China's dominance, consider its historic rise. In 1967, China's steel production was only 3% of the global total. 30 years later, it overtook every other top steel-producing nation. And by the 2000s, China was consistently increasing its steel production by double-digit percentages each year. You can't just issue a tweet and expect US factories to suddenly outproduce China. The issue extends beyond steel. In aluminum production, China is the world's largest primary producer due to its robust manufacturing industry. The US, currently the 9th largest producer, sits just behind Norway and slightly ahead of Iceland, a country with a population of only 382,000. Yet Biden believes the US can surpass China in production. The situation with EVs is even more stark. China accounts for over 60% of global electric car sales, with more than half of the world's electric cars on Chinese roads. China has already exceeded its 2025 target for new energy vehicle sales, highlighting its rapid progress. Auto sales are only half of the equation, emphasizing China's substantial lead in the EV market. In summary, Biden's tariff strategy might seem like a protective measure for US industries, but it overlooks the significant manufacturing gaps and the potential negative impacts on the American economy and consumers. This decision could be the pivotal moment when China's dominance in innovation and industrial capacity becomes indisputable. China controls 80% of the EV battery supply chain, according to White House estimates. This means that no country in the world can produce an EV battery without China's involvement. This reality starkly contrasts Biden's claims that America will dominate these industries. To illustrate, consider this graph showing solar panel production. China leads the industry, producing an astonishing 78% of solar modules. Meanwhile, Vietnam produces 3 times more solar modules than the United States. For the US to catch up with Vietnam, let alone China, it would require a monumental industrial effort, essentially a 40-fold increase in production. I wanted to break down each of these industries to highlight the reality of the situation. Unfortunately, being an election year in the United States, presidential candidates will say anything to garner votes. Many Americans might dream of the US becoming an industrial powerhouse and leading these sectors, but the harsh truth is that Biden's promises are empty. The US cannot compete with China in manufacturing. We've outsourced production to China for decades because they can produce goods faster, cheaper, and better. That's why your iPhone is made in China. Biden's tariffs will ultimately hurt the very people he aims to serve, the average American consumer. He knows this. In fact, he even admitted it. In a July 2019 article titled, "Biden Slams Trump's Trade War Even as He Calls to Get Tough on China," Biden criticized Trump's trade policies, saying, "President Trump may think he's being tough on China, but all he's delivered as a consequence is American farmers, manufacturers, and consumers losing and paying more. His economic decision-making is as short-sighted as the rest of his foreign policy." The 2019 Biden couldn't be more correct. However, he likely wouldn't admit to this now, especially during an election year when politicians need to appear tough on China to win votes. But let's take this one step further. Will these new tariffs even work? Historical data suggests otherwise. The US has been sanctioning China's solar industry for over a decade. A Reuters article from May 2012 announced new tariffs on Chinese solar panels, imposing duties as high as 250% of their sales price. Initially, these tariffs seemed effective, reducing US imports of Chinese solar equipment from $2.8 billion in 2011 to less than $400 million in 2020. However, despite this, China still dominates global solar panel production, demonstrating that tariffs alone are insufficient to shift industrial dominance. That's an over 86% decline in Chinese imports in just 9 years. A tremendous success for the US government, right? Well, not exactly. Despite blocking Chinese imports, these tariffs did nothing to revitalize the US solar industry. Over 12 years of the US government trying to hinder Chinese solar panel imports, China rose to the top, becoming the global leader with a 78% market share, while the US only manages to produce a meager 1.9%. The harsh reality for Biden, the US government, and the average American consumer is that tariffs won't stop China nor help America close the manufacturing gap. French geopolitical commentator Anouar Brahmi recently documented this story on Twitter. His research highlights how much the US solar market has contracted since introducing tariffs against China. North America's market share of polysilicon, the main ingredient for solar panels, dropped from 28.7% to 5.6%. Wafer production is now non-existent. Solar cell production plummeted from 4.6% to 0.6%, and solar module production fell from 7.6% to 2.4%. Brahmi concludes that you can't tariff and subsidize your way into creating homegrown industries. What matters, as the Chinese have understood, is having an incredibly efficient, innovative, and low-cost manufacturing process. Tariffs and subsidies often hinder this by shielding local companies from competition, thereby reducing their incentive to be competitive. Consider the space race between the Soviet Union and the US in the 1960s. When the Soviets became the first nation to put a man in space, it fueled the US government and NASA to work harder and faster, ultimately winning the space race and putting an American on the moon. Intense competition was the catalyst for this achievement. The larger problem for the United States is that resorting to sanctions, tariffs, and attempts to contain another country's rise sends a message to the world. We can't fairly compete, so we will try to stop your growth. This is reminiscent of the Tonya Harding approach, referencing the disgraced American figure skater who hired a hitman to injure her rival, Nancy Kerrigan, before a competition. This plan failed miserably, tarnishing Harding's reputation and ending her career. Similarly, if the US continues to rely on such strategies rather than fostering genuine competitiveness and innovation, it risks damaging its own reputation and future industrial potential. Is this really the direction the US government wants to take with China? Biden's tariff scheme not only impacts US foreign policy, but also creates an image problem for the United States on the world stage. Let me explain. One of the major talking points regarding China in recent weeks is the issue of overcapacity. The US government claims that China isn't playing by the rules because the Chinese government supports certain industries, with subsidies deemed crucial for future development. However, consider how Janet Yellen contradicts herself. With this recent quote, "We're very explicitly subsidizing investments into these important strategic areas. We don't want to see massive Chinese subsidies that will just drive our firms out of business." Let's use some common sense here. Governments worldwide subsidize entire industries, sectors, and companies. In China, industries such as artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, and batteries are prioritized for the future of China's economy and receive preferential tax structures and government support. This is no different from how the US government operates. Here's an interesting fact. The US government is currently subsidizing the EV industry with more money than China's government. Additionally, Biden recently passed the $50 billion CHIPS Act, which was instrumental in funding the construction of a new TSMC semiconductor factory in Arizona. The reason is simple. Microchips are an industry where the United States has a competitive advantage over China. Although China is working hard to close this gap, the US wants to maintain its lead. Hence, Biden's $50 billion subsidy bill supports the industry. This is another case of rules for thee, but not for me. The US government deems it acceptable to fund and subsidize industries it considers important, while criticizing China for doing the same. Let's take this a step further to show why this matters for our foreign policy. A fascinating article from the New York Times, "The End of TikTok is a Propaganda Win for Beijing," reveals a stunning revelation often overlooked by US Congress members. America's moral authority on maintaining open internet platforms will look very different if it bans TikTok. After years of Americans sermonizing about free speech and open trade, autocrats could cite Washington's example when interfering with speech platforms they dislike. The US has long championed an open internet, but now our politicians are leading us toward internet censorship. Everyone, including Chinese citizens, knows China's government censors the internet. What makes the US government any different if it follows the same path? This inconsistency in US foreign policy creates a significant image problem. To conclude, here's another example of US foreign policy contradiction. For decades, the United States has promoted the benefits of an open market. However, with 100% import tariffs on Chinese EVs, the US government is now saying it only favors an open market if it benefits the US. If China stands to gain, the door is closed. The harsh reality is captured in a video by a popular content creator, revealing the real reason behind the US government's desire to ban Chinese EVs. I've never seen a more direct and accurate assessment of the situation. It's the same reason why US politicians want to ban TikTok, because China created something better. Don't believe me? Watch the rest of this video and see if any American or European auto company is producing anything that matches this level of craftsmanship.
I know why Chinese cars aren't sold in America. It's because they would dominate. This is the Yangwang U8. It's the luxury arm of BYD. You get LiDAR sensors here, more LiDAR up there. In the front, your main headlights are here, but at night this entire thing lights up and it looks amazing. You get one electric motor on each wheel and combined it makes 1,180 horsepower. And if you need to do a quick U-turn, watch this. So my charge port is here, and when I open it, this will tell me my charge level. But on this side, you put in gas. That powers your turbo 4-cylinder generator. This doesn't power the car, it just makes electricity for those motors. On a full charge and a full tank of gas, this can do over 600 miles. Inside, you get this panoramic roof that literally has shooting stars, and it can also do this. Ni hao, Yangwang.
我在
Kai Tian Trump.
收到，正在
Hey! You also get pillows in your headrest. My seats are heated, ventilated, and massaging. I get a passenger screen, ambient lighting underneath, more ambient lighting up here, and this curved display that works ultra fast. You also get a front and rear locker, 50-watt charging pads, a built-in cooler, storage space under here, and what's this? Smile. You also get this driver display with touch controls, this gorgeous steering wheel, tons of space in the back, a screen here, another one there, a third screen here, and another wireless charging pad. Not only are my back seats heated and ventilated, they can also massage me. Even my trunk has leather, wood, and suede, and look how big it is. It also has hydraulic suspension and can float in water.
Thank you, everyone, for making it to this point in the video and exploring the topic of US sanctions, China's overcapacity, and the flaws in America's foreign policy approach to China. As always, we are working incredibly hard to bring you the latest geopolitical updates from around the globe. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments section below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching.